Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Joining us on the phones right now to talk about the election and where we are at right now in the 2020 election and the votes that are still being found actually in Georgia. The former director of strategic communications for the Trump campaign, it's Marc Lotter. Marc, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Chad?
Doing great. Okay, I brought up Georgia. Apparently, we're still finding votes out in Georgia. You've got Michigan. You've got Wayne County that at first they weren't certifying their votes. Now they've come back and certified their votes. Where are we in terms of the election and trying to get the real votes and the legal votes counted?
Yeah, well, the process is still playing out, and many states have not certified their votes. And what we're seeing, is that the recount continuing in Georgia by hand, and they have found over 5,000 votes in the last couple of days, which has cut into Joe Biden's lead in that state. We're still seeing, obviously, counting going on in Michigan. But, one of the big questions here, and I've gotten this a lot recently, and I think we've got to be very clear. The mainstream media wants you to say that, well, since the recount is not likely to change the outcome of the election, then we shouldn't be looking into allegations of fraud and impropriety. And that's not it. That's not the standard we should use. If the Democrats were engaging in, these back office shenanigans and ignoring election law, election rules, election safety protocols, it needs to be identified. It needs to be called out. It needs to be put to a stop, regardless of whether it may change the outcome of this election, because we shouldn't just wait around until it possibly changes the outcome of a future election to then call it out as a problem.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got recounts that are going on right now, but you also have a series of court challenges talking about the legality, I guess, of some of these ballots, and talk about the legal issues and the court battles that the Trump campaign is going through right now to again try and get what legal votes were counted.
Well, in many cases we've seen states change the rules in midstream, adjust the rules as it affects Democrat counties. Like in Pennsylvania, there are actually two different standards going on. If you were in a Democrat county in Philadelphia or in Pittsburgh and you incorrectly completed your ballot, normally it would just be thrown out. Well, they notified voters, allowed them to come in and fix their mistakes against state rules and regulations. But in Republican counties, they followed the rules and the laws and didn't allow that to happen. So you had a clear difference. It's under the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution where people weren't treated equally. And so that's a fight that's being had in Pennsylvania. We've obviously got a lot of problems going on in Nevada where we have documented that dead people were voting and that people who don't even live in the county or the state were voting. In some cases, they may have voted in multiple states. All of these things need to be highlighted. They need to be called out. And if this is nothing new. Democrats have been cheating in elections since the 60s when JFK was elected. We know they do it. Now the time is to highlight it, prove it in a court of law, and make sure it gets stopped.
Do you guys have a timeline as to when these lawsuits need to be wrapped up and when voting needs to be wrapped up? What type of timeline are you working on?
Well, each of these states has differing timelines because state laws are different in terms of when they are certified, when you can ask for a recount, when you can do the various steps you have to do. So there is going to be differing timelines. Ultimately, though, what we do know is that the results have to be certified by, I believe, December 7th, and then the Electoral College votes in each state by December 14th.
Right. And is there a hope of pushing that back, or is that is that something that's pretty firm?
I think that's something that's pretty firm. And even if you go back to the 2000 recount, they were decided by the time the Electoral College had to vote.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We're visiting with Marc Lotter here on the Chad Hasty Show. Do you think that the president is getting enough support right now from Republican lawmakers. It kind of seems like, just from some stories that have been out there in the last 48 hours or so, Republican lawmakers starting to, call Joe Biden the president-elect and say it's looking more and more as though he's going to be president-elect. Is the president getting enough support from his own party right now?
No, absolutely. And I think we see that happening, across the country. But we also have to remember that we are a nation of laws and that the laws are going to play out in this respect. And it doesn't really matter whether you call Joe Biden president-elect or don't call him president-elect. That's not what makes him the president-elect. And so until these votes are certified, until the Electoral College meets, that's what the determining factor is. The rest of it is all basically set dressing.
Yeah.
And so we should not get distracted by, what we're calling Joe Biden or whether we're fighting this regardless of whether it could change the outcome or not. This is a president from day one. He fought the deep state. He fought the fake news media. He fought the swamp. And now he's fighting again to expose Democrat machine politics. Whether it will affect this election or not, that will remain to be seen. But if nothing else, he's going to call it out, and he's going to make sure that we have the information. So if at worst case scenario, we can stop it going ahead in the future.
Yeah. Marc Lotter, appreciate your time today. Always a pleasure to visit with you, and hopefully we'll visit again soon.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. That's Marc Lotter, former strategic communications director for the Trump 2020 campaign.